At this time, I'll call the May 23rd, 2023 York County Council Workshop to order. This is our, what is this, Kevin, our third budget workshop? You still politicking? Is this our third workshop? And this agenda is set by management, and so we're going to move forward with any of the folks who requested to speak from the departments. Is there anything that management wants to say before we run through the, okay. The first item is Julie Ward, Executive Director of the York County Library, to address council regarding the library's budget.
Good evening. I'm Julie Ward, the Library Director of York County Library. Our main address is 138 Main Street in Rock Hill. Oh, it's still me, I'm sorry. So I have been the Library Director. This is my third week. So please forgive some stumbles. I hope I'm prepared. I'd like to, if I could, before handing over the budget piece to Lee Smith, our finance manager, just highlight a couple of statistics that we're very proud of that we traditionally present to you at our budget presentations. You'll have this packet, you'll have this information in your packet. And I thought I would just start by saying that we currently have 210,478 library card holders, which is very exciting. And I want to let you know that a lot of people who come to the library to get a card tell us that they've just moved here. So our expanding York County is real. And that's thanks to you and economic development for bringing businesses here and lots of people moving here. Another thing that we're proud of is how many hot spots we have available to our residents here in York County. We now have 225 mobile hotspots available. These are terrific resources for people out in Western York or anyone who doesn't have access to internet. You know, everything today is done over the internet, be that job applications or school homework. So it's nice to have an option to not necessarily have to come to the library to do those things. You can take a hotspot home to get that done, or wherever you'd like to work. I'm very proud also of all of the programs that our staff offer to our residents here at York County Library. They are up to attendance of 97,929 people who attend those programs. And those programs range from early literacy story times from birth through 5, all the way up to programs for seniors, tech tutor help for seniors, or crafting for adults, YA programs such as crafting also, book clubs galore. And another thing that we're able to do in addition to programs in our libraries is we have a YouTube channel, and we provide programs on their new fresh content monthly, and those are highly viewed as well. Those numbers are 54,985 people have watched our programs on YouTube. And finally, I would just like to close out our statistics by letting you know that we have over 1.25 million checkouts this year, which is pretty astonishing. So feedback we get is everybody loves our programs and loves the library, and they're so appreciative, especially of our virtual library, which if you don't know about, please know that you can access books, ebooks or audiobooks. You can access music. You can access videos, movies, TV shows, documentaries, all through our virtual library. And you just need a library card to do that. So I'm very proud to present these statistics to you about our library use. Thank you for the opportunity to provide these services. Lee Smith is our finance manager, and I will hand over the budget explanation to her.
Thank you so much. As she said, I'm Lee Smith, and I am the finance manager for York County Library. Some of you have seen me before, and others are new faces, so hi, thank you for having us. So if you don't mind, just to save some time, I would like to go through the changes to our budget from last year to this year. First, we're starting with not an increase in millage, but just to utilize the new value of a mill, and so that would be our increase request from you all. Increase that we're looking at from other revenue sources would be, even though we've gone fine-free, we are still seeing that we collect revenue from printing services, lost books, things like that. And so we would like to utilize some of those funds to put back towards our organization. We have seen an increase in our Bucks for Books donations. Specifically, our Friends of the Library have been contributing to that. And we also have received an increase in funding from our Friends of the Library, and all of that is utilized towards programming. So next, the increase in expenditures would be salaries. So our current increase, as our board last approved, includes increases to cover all of our recommendations from the class and comp study from MAG, a merit increase, and part-time positions for our Fort Mill and Rock Hill branches. And these positions specifically would allow for additional programming, which Julie mentioned is high in demand. We, as of today, so our board has not approved this yet, so I'm just sharing it here. We are looking at an additional estimated savings in our equipment budget due to working with Chuck in IT and Tira with procurement. They're helping us utilize the Toshiba contract that you all have, and it is going to save us enough money that we do believe we're going to be able to match the county's merit increase, whereas before we weren't sure how we were going to make that work. So we're very excited to hopefully propose that to our board for amendment. Then there's an increase in fringe benefits, and that is just what comes at the cost of increasing salaries and the required 1% increase in the retirement match. There is an increase in workers' comp due to the increase in salaries. As for a few decreases that we're looking at is insurance. Our previous insurance agent or representative gave us an estimate and it didn't come back as high, so we were able to decrease there. And also in telephone, we have seen a decrease in our cost in those services as we've cut lines that were no longer needed. Vehicle operations and maintenance, that is going up just due to the increase in those costs in general, as well as the increasing age of our vehicles. Utilities, we do anticipate a slight increase there this year. Training, we anticipate having an increase there. We would like to be able to provide more training and development opportunities for our staff. That has not been an area where we have seen a lot of growth, and so that is something that we are hoping to implement in the coming year. Then we have a slight increase in audits and consultants. That is a result of just the actual costs of our annual audit. The decrease in equipment and maintenance, that was an anticipated decrease. We have confirmed that it will decrease significantly more than that, as I mentioned moments ago. Public programmings or public programs, there is an increase there as a result in the increase in funding from our Friends of the Library, as well as some of the increase in the value of the mill. Then we have a slight increase in miscellaneous expense. That's just miscellaneous. And then if you look at our books, library materials, electronic resources, it looks like there is a decrease there, and technically there is. However, it is simply being shifted to cover the increase in our cost of the SC Lens Consortium membership, which if you look at your stats sheet, you'll see that we get an incredible value for the cost of that for our patrons. It allows them to access materials from other libraries, and it gets utilized heavily. And then there's a slight increase in bank service charges, and so that covers all of our changes. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from council? Just so that I'm clear, you're not when you start at the outset, you're not requesting a millage increase.
No, ma'am, we are.
Only the increase in the value of the mill that
Yes,
applies to all the other departments.
Yes, that's correct.
Can you share with me where the Friends of the Library funding, where that falls in your line item budget? Is that under
Yes.
restricted gifts or?
It
miscellaneous?
is under, yes, restricted gifts and grants. It's the, from 57,500 to 73,000.
Can you explain 2020, 2021? That's a big jump.
Yes,
there
that
something-
was from 2020, 2021.
The 365,000.
Yes. So that was, if I remember correctly, the year that we got our bookmobile. And so we received funding from our Friends of the Library, and we also received funding from the state library to facilitate the purchasing of our bookmobile.
Those are questions I have. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just have one question. The fringe benefits,
Yes.
that's from 695 to 932. Can you explain that?
Fringe benefits from, I'm sorry, from,
It's showing 695 and 2223, and you're showing 932, 1932.
yes. So that is a result of, so the increase in salaries. So that is covering FICA and Medicare on the increase in salaries. That is covering the increase in insurance. That is covering the increase in, oh, and that's something that I forgot to mention. I apologize. Insurance. Our portion of insurance costs increased 18% this year. So for every employee that we have, our costs for medical insurance did increase 18%.
And
So-
that's incorporated in that?
Yes, sir, that is incorporated. Also, what is incorporated is the additional 1% that we're required for the retirement match.
Okay.
Could you, how many do y'all employ?
Okay, so currently we have 109. We have 2 openings, so when we're fully staffed, we have 111 employees.
Any other questions? Thank you, ladies. We appreciate you being
Thank
here
you
tonight.
so much. We appreciate your time.
The next individual who requested to speak is the coroner, Sabrina Gass, to address council regarding the coroner's budget.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you again. Thank you for letting me speak. I just wanted to come before you guys and request that you reconsider my request for staffing in this budget cycle. I requested 2 additional full-time deputies and a full-time evidence technician. We saw a large increase in our case numbers in 2019, and then we had COVID, of course, hit in late 2019, 2020. Our COVID numbers have gone down, but our case numbers have not. In some comparison numbers to the counties that we are generally compared to, we are understaffed compared to those counties. And I'll just use these quick numbers for you. Spartanburg County, which is very similar in our size and demographics, they have 10 full-time investigators, 10 part-time investigators, 4 full-time admin, 1 coroner, 1 volunteer, and they've requested another part-time admin for this year.
Which
So that's a
district did you say that
total of-
was?
That's Spartanburg.
Okay.
They have a total of 26 employees in their office, and they have a caseload of last year of 2,700 cases, when we saw 2,400 cases. So they're just a little over 300 more cases than we see here in York County. The next county that I'd like to just kind of point out also, that is also, we get compared to a lot, is Lexington County. Lexington County has 10 full-time investigators, whereas we here in York County, there's only 6 full-time investigators, 6 deputy coroners, myself, and a chief deputy, so 8 full-time investigators. Our case numbers have gone up. Our drug overdose cases are going up. We all know that from all the media input there. We also had another hospital that was opened up in September, which has increased our number of cases. And a lot of people look at me like I'm crazy when I tell you that. But if you think about the demographics of how Fort Mill is set up and York County is set up, Fort Mill Hospital is now on the freeway where patients stop before they go to Charlotte. So they're stopping there, they're sick, they're getting admitted there, and they're dying there, which increases the number of calls that we're having to make to the emergency departments. It is very difficult for us, for our staff, especially if we have someone that's out sick. We had a deputy that was out sick several months because of an injury, and we had to call, and there's no wiggle room for our deputies when we're having somebody that's out sick. Our deputies do 24 hours of call at a time, and they do a 7-day stretch of backup call as well. We have 3 people on call at all time to cover the county. It's very often now where we have both our primary and secondary investigators out on calls just due to the caseloads that we're having. Not only are the caseloads increasing, the complexities are increasing as well. It's not just a simple going out to a home, doing a quick death investigation and being completed. It's working with families, it's doing autopsies, it's doing drug analysis, it's doing medical records reviews. It's working with the experts that we work with and doing a thorough death investigation, which includes doing everything from the scene investigation, the autopsy, toxicology, and everything that's combined in that. So I'm just asking that you reconsider at least giving us one of the positions. I would love to have just one of the positions, if that's at least possible, because we really need that additional person in the office. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
I would ask that management put together at least your response, because I think the way the budget works is there's requests, and then there's a line item that says recommended, and so I'd at least like to hear from you all as to your response on that, and let council have a chance to see that. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I just had one question. What is the, from 22 to 23, you said there was an increase in cases.
We saw a large increase in 2019. So in 2019, our caseload went up from 1,968 to 2020 of 2,440. We did add a position in the office that was an admin person that helps us with our cremation permits. But since 2020, and then COVID hit at the end of 19, early 2020, and then our COVID numbers did go up. Our case numbers went up with that.
Yeah.
But now COVID's gone, and our case numbers have not fallen, and we have not increased staff to meet that demand for that time period.
Okay, so it stayed up there. Okay. And were you able to, with Narcan and the fentanyl issues that have been arising on there, were you able to get any additional assistance in regards to that at all? I know that.
No, we didn't qualify for that because we don't do education and prevention, and that money's meant for education and prevention instead of the backside. Our deputies do carry Narcan because we are the ones that are picking up the medications from the homes. Those homes have to be inventoried, counted, and logged into our evidence property room. So everybody has Narcan because we never know what we're going to come into contact with. We have protocols in the office where you can't count meds by yourself because, again, we don't know what's going on. So we have Narcan in the office as well as in the autopsy suite, because there's frequently when we'll find drugs on the decedents once we get them to the autopsy suite as well. So we're having to make sure that we have maintained safety for both of our office staff, and we can use them out in the community as well as first responders. We were designated as first responders. I don't know if you know that, with the new statute that will be signed into law by the governor here soon. So we now qualify as a first responder under the state statutes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Sabrina.
No.
We
All right,
appreciate the
thank
work you do.
Thanks.
Our next item is Lori Robichaud, Executive Director of the Arts Council of York County, to address council regarding funding for the Arts Council.
Good evening. You may recall seeing me a couple weeks ago when I had my 2 minutes. Tonight I have 10 minutes. I'd like to just talk to you a little bit about the Arts Council. Let's see if I can manage the technology. I know a couple of you are new, and some of this is history. We are obviously not an agent of county government, but we have received county money in the past until the hospitality tax was redirected. So I'm back to kind of try to make an argument that some other funding can be found for the Arts Council. Just to let you know a little bit about us, we've been around almost 50 years, since 1977, serving residents of York County. I'm going to read our mission to you because it's got a lot in it. To create arts programming that encourages education, economic development, and arts advocacy through unique art experiences that engage the community to make York County a regional arts destination. Like all good mission statements, it's jam-packed with all sorts of information, but it really is something we adhere to. And our vision is to create a thriving, diverse, and vibrant arts community. We do year-round programming, art exhibitions, festivals, public art classes, small grant support for some 20 projects a year, and I'll come back to that, and marketing of arts events throughout York County. We manage 2 facilities, one that we own, the Center for the Arts on Main Street in Old Town Rock Hill, and the Tom S. Geddes Center that we manage for the city. And as a point of pride for York County, Rock Hill was the first state-designated cultural district in the entire state of South Carolina, and that was recently renewed for another 5 years. A cultural district is where there's just a lot of activity that's very walkable in the arts and culture sector. The economic impact is substantial for essentially a community in the shadow of a big city like Charlotte. $27 million, and that's just the nonprofit, arts and cultural sector, and their audiences throughout York County. The latest survey was a national study done with Americans for the Arts. I'm acquainted with that because I actually used to work for them in Washington, and it's serious numbers that have been taken very seriously by a lot of public entities in the country. And that's where the numbers came from, and that we determined that 26% of our visitors come from outside York County. So that's the tourism aspect, and at that time, around 800 full-time equivalent jobs. Our signature programs you may have heard of. Our Blues and Jazz Festival has been around for 18 years, chiefly as a crawl in Old Town, but we've also worked in Baxter Village, Clover, and York, addressing a number of people who come to the area and they shop and they dine and they drink as well as listen to music. The other program that I know Ms. Love is especially knows about is the York County Ag and Art Tour. I left a little rack card in your stack. We were the ones who started it in York County, and now there are 12 other counties, and it's statewide, attracting around 6,000 visitors to our agricultural farms and other tour sites over 2 days this weekend. It is coming up June 10th and 11th. We are in 27 farm and tour sites, 8 in Rock Hill, 5 in York, 5 in Fort Mill, 3 in McConnells, 2 in Sharon, 2 in Clover, 1 in Smyrna, and 1 in the Catawba Reservation, with some 80-plus artisans and musicians on the site, hence ag and art. Also, you may be aware of that we have barn quilts at many of the farms listed, and another rack card I left for you with the South Carolina Heritage Quilt Tour. So that's another layer of tourism that the arts provide. Year-round, we have probably one of the finest visual arts exhibition spaces in the county, and that's the Dalton Gallery for the Arts at the Center for the Arts, where we have 8 to 10 experienced artists each year, along with some emerging artists in our perimeter gallery who are exhibiting. We also do community and school projects. This year, for instance, the Catawba Nations artists are going to be with us in October, and every year we work with the York County high schools to give them a professional type opportunity outside of their schools. Our art openings are always free and open to the public, so that's a great way where we attract tourists at least each month. On the services part of the work, our small grants program has been going on for a number of years, and where we give small grants, literally, up to about $1,000 to individual artists and small nonprofits doing arts programming. And the examples I list for you, a filmmaker from York got help for the music production in his latest film. The Rock Hill Symphony Orchestra, which is fairly new to York County, a free family concert. Clinton College, our historic black college in Rock Hill, we helped them with a new mural on one of its residence halls. Fort Mill, folks, are you aware of that big storm drain art up in Kingsley? It's really cool. I think they're doing the unveiling in a couple of weeks. And it's educational as well as artistic, talking about the importance of storm drains and keeping stuff out of the Storm Brains that ought not to be there. A ceramic artist from Sharon, we've helped her with her festival vendor fees as she goes around the Carolinas with her pottery work. Yorkville Historical Society this last year, their musician fees for its first Juneteenth celebration. I was there, it was a wonderful program. York County Library, who you heard from tonight, we've helped them with some of the artistic parts of their work, helping fund the literary artists who were part of the Patchwork Tales Storytelling Festival this last spring at the Greenway. And the York County Choral Society for its 41st season concert. I was also at that. It was fabulous. Those are just some examples. I've obviously looked at geographic spread, different art forms, individual artists and organizations. Also, our services for the community, we have art studios, and that means we provide artists with below market, affordable rents so they can do their work in studios. And we offer that opportunity to around a couple of dozen artists at this point. On the marketing side, we do a weekly newsletter of arts happenings and online arts calendar for all organizations and their activities throughout the county. So if they use it, we have a one-stop shop to help people. On the education front, we do art classes to the community. We have sponsored children's theater performances at different elementary schools. And again, the visual art, teacher's choice, youth art exhibit, York County high schools. We do facility rentals too. These are 2 buildings, they're over 100 years old, but especially the Center for the Arts is a lovely space, not only just for performances, but also for things like weddings, reunions, proms, and so forth. The community can rent our space, have a beautiful space for relatively inexpensive rates, and it's income for us. Oops, wrong way. We play well with others. We really try to work with other organizations. You can just see the listing of many county-wide organizations. We are in Rock Hill, but that is the largest city in the county, and we know that a lot of artistic activity happens where more people can gather. So those are just a listing of some of the organizations that we work with. I do call attention to the York County Regional Chamber. I did their leadership class this year and heard people like Sabrina talk about the work of the coroner's office. So those are some of the programs we work with. But what I'm here to say is that we're a small organization. We think we're very effective. And our past funding has gone away. And what I'm showing you is that for at least 10 years, which is as far back as our QuickBooks go, we receive between $42,000 and $60,000 annually. And since the H-tax was diverted elsewhere, we've had nothing for the last 3 years. And then for the accommodations tax, again, we got between $2,000 and $9,000 annually, and we've had $2,500 the last 2 years. So doing the math, we've gone from a high of $60,000 down to $2,500 this year. I think we've really proven ourselves to be very good stewards of our county funds. And we know as the county is growing, a vigorous arts sector is a proven recruitment and retention tool, and it contributes to economic development. As we look at kind of what we call the arts, culture, and tourism sector, I invite you to think of us more like the library, the Cultural and Heritage Museums. Visit York County. They are doing really important work in this county, but it's the arts piece that is missing. We'd like to be added back into that funding mix. We're looking for $75,000, $60,000 that, again, assists us with the year-round programming and marketing that we do. And then $15,000 is a new ask, and that's for the small grants I just talked about. That was in partnership with the South Carolina Arts Commission for many years. They too have gone through strategic planning, and their sub-granting, which had gone to 7 of the larger counties, they've decided they can do something that reaches all of the counties better, so they have withdrawn that funding. So we were looking for other partners. We have an excellent process in place. We are just looking for the funding to help us match what the Arts Council will raise privately. And that's my pitch. I'm happy to take any questions.
Lori, thank you for the work that you do for the Arts Council, and certainly appreciate your passion for the arts. Do we have any questions from council?
Yeah, I just, first of all, I'd like to thank you on these events here that you did show us. And the tourism component of that, I've had people come to me saying they've been to the food festivals and they've been, to the outdoor art shows, and quilt festivals, and they really enjoyed them. So, very good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you for your kind attention.
We move now to the topic of recreation funding discussion. Mr. Hudspeth, you going to lead us on that?
Yeah, I thought I'd just try to give a brief history of the recreation funding in York County. And I know there's a lot of gray hair out there that may be able to correct me on some of my facts if I'm wrong. So I will just try to go through how we've traditionally funded recreation. We did have recreation as a county department, I think in the early 90s, and decided not to do that as a county and redirected that funding to the municipalities to help support their funding, their recreation efforts, kind of acknowledging that people in York County got their recreation services at that time from the cities. In 2004, 2005, there was a lot of discussion about creating a funding source for the municipalities that we could help supplement them in providing recreation activities, particularly youth sports, but other types of activities, athletics that took place at their parks. And a 1.5 mil a tax district was created in the unincorporated area of the county, in which we levied a 1.5 mil tax in that district and distributed that money to the municipalities based on a formula. That formula was primarily based on school district population and was divvied up that way, and that kind of prevailed up until the 2016 or so. There was some changes adjusted in that formula over the years, but by and large it was divvied up to the municipalities for that period of time. Fiscal year 2022 funding was allocated to the municipalities in the same amounts that had been previously, but we added the Lake Wylie tax district, recreation tax district, to the mix there, and the Lake Wylie tax district was able to get the growth in the mill for that particular year. That was kind of the compromise we reached. All the municipalities stayed at the same funding level they had the year before, and the Lake Wylie tax district received the growth. Last year, current year we're in, fiscal year 23, council passed a budget that included funding for the municipalities as well as Lake Wylie tax district in specific amounts, not based on a particular formula, but I think it was negotiated partly and partly based on formula, and we came up with a funding allocation for each of the municipalities plus Lake Wylie. This year, we're recommending that funding be maintained, but the growth be divvied up in the same ratio that it was last year, and that's what you have before you. We also passed an ordinance last year that said year to year, county council would make the final decision on the distribution of revenue, and that each of the entities that receive funding would make a report to council on how they use that money to provide recreation for the citizens of the unincorporated area, and also would make a new request for funding for each year thereafter. So that's where we are, and I think they have some proposal to make as well. I've talked to some of them.
I think any of the entities that receive funding or that stand to receive funding, they have an opportunity to come and address the council or to provide information about what they're looking for this year, what the programs are. I do know that when we passed the amended ordinance last year, that it had some protections in place about how the council receives the funding. one of the main issues being making sure that folks that lived in the unincorporated areas, which is where the funding comes from, don't get charged more than the residents who are inside the entities that are providing the service, that they get equal access at the same price if there's a charge to that. But happy to listen.
Awesome. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before y'all. My name is Joey Bluffin. I'm the Deputy City Manager for the City of TK, and I've been selected by my peers to serve as the chair for the Municipal Recreation Association of York County. Our group is represented by the incorporated municipalities of York County, which includes Clover, Fort Mill, Rock Hill, TK, York, Hickory Grove, McConnells, Sharon, and Smyrna. The intent of our group is to collaboratively work with the incorporated municipalities and York County to provide exceptional recreation services for all of the county residents. Last year, as Mr. Husbeth had pointed out, council directed us to provide you information, which you should have in your blue packets, with the recreation services that we offered, the number of participants utilizing those services, and what we're using the county recreation funds for in our municipalities. As a group, we've collectively submitted that information. And just a few highlights. In total, last year, our municipalities programmed for over 29,104 county residents, with only 10,419 of those, or 38%, from our own municipalities. The other 62% is 18,685 residents from unincorporated York County. The municipalities also offered year-round community events for over 300,000 people last year. At the front of your packet, you'll see the current York County proposal that Mr. Husbeth spoke on earlier, and also an alternative funding that was unanimously approved by our association. I speak for the group in saying that we're very thankful for the county's continued financial commitment to our recreation in our communities. Your funding is essential to supporting the growing number of participants in our county. Our concern with the current proposal is it does not fulfill council's desire to establish a long-term funding formula. Another concern regarding the current proposal is the disproportionate amount of the funding given to the Clover School District, which is Clover and the Lake Wylie Tax District. As the proposal currently stands, they will see 37% of the funding despite only holding 25% of the county's unincorporated population. And if you break that down further, Lake Wylie, the unincorporated area, the tax district, accounts for 25% of the total recreation funding for the county. The association has met several times and discussed and evaluated several different proposals before choosing the funding formula submitted to you this evening for council's consideration. We are proposing to distribute the recreation funds based off of the unincorporated populations for each school district. This allows the funds to be proportionally allocated to the areas serving the most unincorporated York County residents and establishes a funding formula that can be used for years to come as York County continues to grow. As a group, we believe this proposal is not only the fairest way to distribute the recreation funds, but also the most impactful for all of the county residents. Members of the council, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak again this evening. I want to leave everyone with one last question to consider as you evaluate the proposals. What proposal best supports the constituents in your district that you were elected to serve? Thank you. I would accept
Thank
any
you, sir.
questions if you have any.
Are there any questions from council?
I just have one question for you. You said that Lake Wylie receives, I think you said Lake Wylie receives 25% of the total funding.
Yes, ma'am. Based off the current proposal.
So do you know what percentage of the funding is collected in Lake Wylie?
Not off the top of my head, but I know it's.
Kevin, can you tell us what percentage is collected in Lake Wylie?
Off the top of my head,
Unincorporated Lake Wylie, but
30% or so. Mr. Seeger's over here.
And I know
I think it's
a
about
large
30%,
portion of
about
that's
a third.
Duke Energy, correct? That's an entity, not a person.
well, it doesn't really matter if it's an entity or a person. Each district collects from entities in that district. So we just happen to have the largest unincorporated area in the county. So we are, not only have we self-funded Field Day Park, but we are also funding recreation, firefighters, hospitality dollars throughout the county. And we don't have a problem with that, but when you come every year and try to take that funding, take our recreational funding that is going to Lake Wiley and Clover, we might have a problem with that. So I would like for you, when you come up and make a presentation like this and you say that Lake Wiley is receiving 25% of the funding, I'd like for you to have in your back pocket a number that shows what the amount is that's collected. So, because when you use the word proportional and fair, I want to be sure that you've actually looked at it and know those numbers by heart.
Understood. Through our lens, and this is strictly our proposal, is that we believe the most impactful for all of the county is to distribute based off the unincorporated populations of all the county, not just specific areas.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a general comment. And it's interesting because, you know, being as on RFATS and looking at our new census numbers that came through, speaking of the Fort Mill TDK area, that was, the increase was about, I think, estimated about 34,000 people census-wise that were in the Fort Mill and TDK area, in the unincorporated area. So again, I'm just sharing this to the public. It was a large increase from in that region, and again, I know how it impacts, you know, the Fort Mill and TDK programs, but I think it's just important information to share. There was a large increase in the unincorporated area in the last census. Yeah.
I've just got one more comment. So the last year and not really prior to that, but in the last year, we had a representative from Lake Wiley, from Field Day Park, working with y'all, with what was the coalition at that time. Did you include that person in any of the, I mean, if you're gonna talk about everybody that's getting an allocation, did you include Mr. Johnson in those conversations?
No, ma'am, because we're strictly representing the municipalities of York County.
Okay. So Perry, is there anything that you would like to add to?
Well, before we ask anybody else to come up, are there any other, I have a couple of questions. I just want to get clarity on the proposal that we have. So the 90,000 was the increase in the value of the mill. That's the difference between what was available last year and what's available this year. Is that right? As I understand the staff's recommendation, they've kept the base in place and then they've allocated pro rata from what was decided last year. Is that what I understand? Okay. And so the allocation that's proposed by the municipal entities, is that the unincorporated, the total unincorporated populations?
Yes,
You just
ma'am.
use that, or do you use the school
Yes, ma'am. Each
populations?
section is broken up based off the unincorporated populations within the school districts to
Okay.
provide that funding formula.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have
Yeah.
any questions before we?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate that. I do think that it's appropriate for anyone else who's receiving funding. If you want to come up, Perry, if you're the representative for Field Day Park.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk. I'm sure I would get it, but I appreciate it. Gosh, everybody talks about transparency. Wow. This county council and staff said that Lake Wiley was now should be part of the program to disperse, to divide up funding. And now all of a sudden, the next thing I know is County Manager Hudspeth sent out a notice to me and to everybody on this group what the spread should be, or what they thought it should be. And I looked at it and thought it was pretty good. A little bit later on, I understand that the municipalities are now meeting without me, so I just kind of replied back to the municipalities. And I got an extreme snide remark that said, well, since you're not a municipality, we don't think you should join us. Something to that effect. And it was really, that was harsh. I mean, we had been working on this for this many iterations, and I don't even get an opportunity. The Lake Wiley area, our tax district, is one of the major contributors to this unincorporated fund. And we don't even get a say-so in how it's dispersed. It's wrong, really wrong. Over 16 years, and quite honestly, I sat in your seats 16 years ago and started the recreation funding. I knew that we needed a place for our children to play. Over this period of time since we've started this, the Lake Wiley area has contributed over $10 million. And do you know how much we've received in return to the Lake Wiley area? $138,000 out of the over 10 million that we put into it. And we don't even get an opportunity to participate in where it should be divided.
I think that opportunity is now to hear from
And that's
Field
what
Day
I'm
Park.
doing, but I don't even know what numbers that y'all are looking at. I don't know. Got no clue.
Can we make sure that we have copies available for anybody who's here? Make sure that they can have
But
access
let me
to
say
that.
this, I like what Mr. Hudspeth has presented. I'm okay with those numbers, and I don't know, how do they stack up against what y'all are looking at now? Because I don't know.
I think anyone who wants a copy of
I'm
that
not gonna
certainly
look at
should
it
be able to
today.
have an opportunity to see that.
I'm wanting you guys to look at it from everybody's perspective and have the realization that, you know, we need things out in our district too. We do have a lot of population, and it's growing, and it's funding. So the council and staff is treating us as a municipality. So we raise money, the municipalities raise money. Municipalities keep all of their money. The municipalities keep all their heads and beds money. They keep all of the other surplus money. And they take our money in the unincorporated areas and disperse among the municipalities. And then they tell us, oh, by the way, we'll give you this little bit over here. That's wrong. It's totally wrong. And I'm bringing this before you because I know you'll do the right thing. And yes, I'd love to look at it, but I know time is growing short now. You've got a budget to look at. We had a budget in our park, and we said, and I sent Mr. Hudspeth a note that said, we're okay with the recommendation of reducing the millage for the park based on the fact that we know that we were going to get our fair portion. Well, we're not getting our fair portion, but what we've agreed to of this recreation tax. But now from what I'm hearing, the millage is going to get reduced, and I'm assuming that this is going to be less than what Mr. Hudspeth has presented. Is it less? Is it less than 383,606?
Yeah, I think what you're asking is the proposal that we've heard tonight provide less funding for Lake Wiley than the management's recommendation.
That is my question.
Yes, it is less.
How much?
And we can provide that to you. We didn't have a hand in producing that either, but we
I
can provide it to you.
I understand, and that's why I say, you know, this is what's wrong.
But
We tried to work together, and this council actually said, all of you get together, and if you can't come up with a unanimous vote, then we will do away with the county recreation tax. We met again with the committee. The same thing was said. And now we're right back to, let's not tell Lake Wiley what we're doing, and let's take some more of their money for another 10 years. I don't know where to go. I really don't. And it's up to you guys. It is to do the right and fair thing. See where the money's coming from, see where the money's going to. The municipalities say, oh, well, you know, you've got Duke Energy. Well, there's industry all over this county. We don't get that. We're just asking for what we're putting in. We're not even asking for what we put in. Not even asking for what we put in. We just want a fair portion. We realize we got to help some of the lesser municipalities, and that's fine. I'm not going to stand up here and take up your time. I think I've made myself perfectly clear. I hope that you will actually take the time to look at the numbers, not just as they presented, but look at the numbers that these gentlemen over here and ladies that can provide it to you to say, okay, this is where the money is coming from. This is where it should be going back to. Thank you.
Thank you, Perry. Are there any questions for Perry? Thank you. Thank you for comments. Do we have, and again, I do think anyone who wants a copy of that certainly can get one from our clerk as well. Anyone in here who would like to see that. This is an opportunity for council to hear from agencies as to what they're requesting in funding. We debate the issues when it comes to our public hearing, which is on May 30th, and then we have third reading after that. So that is when the council weighs in and we're taking in information now from the departments and the agencies to understand where their positions are so that we can factor that into our decision when we make that decision later. And we get to hear from you all next week. I would ask that any of the reports that were submitted from any of the entities receiving the funding, make sure, as the ordinance requires now, is that it comes to the council. So I think there's several in here. I don't know that all of the entities receiving funding submitted something, but I think it would be helpful for you to make sure everyone has got information included before we get to the public hearing. Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. It looks as if we do not have any other presenters. Do we have an executive session item? Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned.